How's it going, guys? It's me, Lynn Vale again, or Colin Chambers. If you have any questions after this video, you can either comment in the comment section below, you can email me, you can PM me on SoundCloud or anything like that. So, we're going to start out from the very beginning, understanding about your equipment and how equalization works. So, first things first, whatever you're monitoring on, you need to know the dynamic range of. Currently, I'm using DT880 Premiums. They are probably one of the best headphones on the market if you have like in the middle type of budget. I got mine for $180 on Amazon from the Bayer Dynamic seller. So to understand, I have the 250 ohm version, which is in the middle. I would have the 600 ohm version, but I don't have enough money for a better headphone amp than I currently have. So these are semi-open back, which, to give you a little bit of knowledge on the difference between the different headphone backs, the closed-backed headphones, you still can use them for EQing. The only thing about them is that you can get ear fatigue very easily, and because the reason why is because when sound is coming out of the headphones, they can hit against the back of the basically back against the, I was trying to find a different word, against the back of the headphone, because they're being trapped inside over ear. So then the sound just kind of bounces around. You don't have really any acoustic reasoning on how the song will sound in open spaces. This is if you were to not have enough money for a monitor setup, open backs would be the best way to go. If you do have monitors, try to keep them in a symmetrical triangle to you. If they're going, I would not go less than 3 feet away from each other. They should be pointed in a triangle to you. If the monitors are 3 feet away from each other, 3.5 feet, I would say 3.5 feet actually. If they're 3.5 feet away from each other, you should be 3.5 feet away from the speakers in a triangle manner. I would take pink noise, add 2 audio clips of pink noise, and invert the polarity of one. Once you can feel the pressure of one side, and it almost feels like it's off balance. You can hear one side, but you can also hear the other side, but it just sounds like they're off balance. You can just hear the pressure of one of another. That's when you're in the sweet spot. So I just wanted to clear up how monitors work. But let's talk about what I'm working with today. I'm working, again, with the DT880 Premiums. The premium version, I think, just has better quality stuff that it's built with. But I have a 5 hertz to 35,000 hertz response. In FL Studio, we only work with 20 to 20,000 hertz. To give a perspective on what the average human can hear, we can hear usually about 35 to 40 hertz to 17 and maybe 16 to 17,000 hertz. If you have a good sense of your highs, you can hear to 18,000. So now that what we know what we're working with, and we kind of have our dynamic range set, we're going to go ahead and go into FL. Now this is a track. Actually, I don't know if I should show this track as a reference. Let me just open up this one instead, actually. So basically, equalization, how it works is when you send sound through an equalizer, you're shifting phase, and essentially what that means is a good way to look at it is if you were to use Serum, which I don't know if I have a Serum open. I do, actually. If I were to open up Serum, there's actually a way that you can see the phase right here. And basically how that works is that you're shifting the EQ down. If you look up articles on how EQ shifting works, they can explain it better than I can. But it's just good to know that if you're using an analog EQ or using something that's not like what does FL have for a default equalizer? There's one that's not linear phase, which is filters. No. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? If you want a like cut it all the way off, which is usually for like your, where am I looking? Convolver, I think it is. Right, where's your EQ at? In here, there's an EQ that you can actually use. Equalizer. Right here. If you use this, I don't think this actually gives any phase. At least that's what I've heard. And in the presets, they have linear phase EQ. That's what you want to use. Anything that's not a linear phase EQ, I think, still causes phase. I'm not too knowledgeable on that. I just wanted to clear up some stuff for the people who do know further into that kind of stuff. I'm still learning about linear phase EQ and the difference between that and analog. But we'll just get along with the basics and how you do stuff with electronic music. This is a project I might not finish. It's a big room house track, but I mean it's the purest form of EDM you can probably get to. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I don't really need to hold close samples, so I'm going to turn my sample rate back a little bit. So let's get started. So with FL, we've got the parametric EQ. Now, like I say before, I'm just going to reinform everybody again. I do recommend compressing before equalizing. There's many reasons that people do say you should or you shouldn't compress before you EQ. My reason is you need to know the exact level of what you're working with before you EQ. If you EQ and you're boosting frequencies, that usually would cause a big problem if you're going to EQ when boosting or taking away frequencies and then amplifying it or taking sound away with a compressor. So please compress before you equalize. The chain on FL matters. Right here, it's side chaining with gross beat first before it goes to limiter to get side chained by everything else. What's happening is if I were to replace this custom free reverb, which is a freeware by the way, I think it is, from what I remember. If I were to put gross beat here first, the reverb, it side chains the reverb. Or wait, no. It doesn't sidechain the reverb, but if I were to move it up, now it's going, the sound is basically, think of all of these as tubes. The sound is going through channel 14. As it's going down channel 14, it's being EQ'd first. Then reverb is being added to it. Then the sound with these two effects are now being applied through a sidechain. So even the reverb's being sidechained. If I were to do like this, it would not be, the sidechain would not be, or the reverb would not be sidechained anymore. So just wanted to clear that up also, just so you guys understand how the slots work in FL, if you don't know already. So we're going to look at this lead I have. We're going to isolate it, and I'm going to let you guys hear how it sounds through the whole song. It sounds very awkward because you have a swing. You have main swing being automated right there. So my CPU just went all the way up. Anyway, so let's start out. There was some talk about EQing for highs and lows. Mostly highs. A lot of people were scared about it. So let's go ahead and talk about that then. So let's go ahead and get our sidechain off so we can just listen to it in its purest form. Let's pull up our EQ and let's listen. Now you can see this has a lot of mid potential. It does have a lot of low potential. That's why I cut it off, because I consider anything below 120 to be low end. Starting at low at 120 and going above, I consider mids. Right when you get to about, I just moved that EQ. I didn't mean to. Right when you get about to 5 or 6,000, I consider that to be high. Maybe even 8,000 I would consider to be high, because mids really just depends upon the listener or whoever's mixing, what they consider the highs, because each track has a different tone to it. Anyway, first thing I would recommend, if you don't have this plugin already, to get it, because it helps me tremendously with EQing. And that is, hold on, let me find it. ISOL 8 is what it's called. It's a 5-band frequency monitor. Basically, you can set where everything goes. So the first knob's low mids, high mids, highs, and it shows where the bands start. We're gonna bring this down to 120 because that's where I think. Can I actually? Yeah, I can do this. Oh no. 120. Ooh, whoops! I'm shifting. Oops, totally forgot. Let me just get back to this, maybe. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm using OBS, so it switches between the streams if I hit numbers. So, we're gonna listen to our highs, high mids, and our highs, and we're just gonna listen for a little bit and see what we can do. Now, as you can see right off the back, if we want to listen to this, right around that high mids, right around the transitioning from 4K into 5K, we have a lot of clashing right there. Right where I had that band just before, you can tell the difference actually. So that sounds a lot better. And when you hear the sound in whole. So we're going to turn off the EQ for a second so I don't lose that band. Now we're going to turn it on and we'll see the difference. That sounds a lot better. It sounds a lot it's a lot less bearing on the ears. Takes a lot less of the slapping sound. You can hear the tone is almost a slapping sound. It's high mids, not really specifically highs, but it's that top part of the high mids where you can hear that slapping sound happen. Now, when doing notch bands like this, like you can see 6, we can consider that somewhat of a notch. With FL, I would try not to go below -6 decibels, and I'll show you where that is. -6 decibels when cutting part of an equalizer is right here. That's basically just how many decibels you're cutting in a certain frequency, or however however you want to say that. Anyway, if there's really that one specific teeny tiny frequency band that you just can't get over, maybe you could get it to 16, but even this, you can see it's still cutting out a good chunk, maybe 300 hertz off that top. So I would just really keep your EQs as low as you, not as low, but maybe kind of in the middle. I'm kind of tedious about going below -6 sometimes, but if it's just like one wide band right here that is just really killing the sound, I'll lower it to -16 or -18, whatever that is. But yeah, just be aware of that. Try to be careful. A lot of things I see from beginners, they do big boost to things where they think needs boosting. EQ is not a chance to boost the sound, and that's a misconception a lot. It is not a part of the mixing process where you boost sounds substantially. You when you're with bass sounds, you shouldn't be boosting all the way up here. That's something that makes a lot of beginner mixes sound the way they do, really muddy, really bassy, even though really the goal of the mix is to get it as not really as flat as possible, but before the mastering stage, it needs to be leveled properly. The frequencies all need to be balanced out. Everything needs to be heard. And that's your job as the mixer, or as the producer, as whoever is mixing the track. It is your job to make that determination. Where does the track need to be cut? And that's what we're seeing in the high end. You can see that slapping sound. I made the determination off of the equipment that I had that it was too much. It was too much, and I actually might try not to cut as a lot out. I might leave it like right there. So yeah, that. It's just your job. You make the calls and you get feedback for that after. When it comes to high end, this is my suggestion for how you make determinations when cutting off high end. If it does really sound harsh, I would say above 10,000. If it starts getting harsh, slope it off. And a lot of people make the mistake of boosting high end a lot. And there may be cases where you need to boost high end, but I started noticing once I got control of my low end, I had a problem with boosting my highs too much. And I got criticism for that. Please be lenient when boosting your highs. Muddiness in the highs or clashing. I would rather say clashing in the highs rather than muddy. Clashing in the highs can be as bad as mud in the lows. And I've seen it before. A perfect example, if you want something like this, listen to Vanta Black by Dirty Phonics, and I can't remember who he collabed with that song. Vanta Black on Monster Cat. Beautiful, beautiful song. The highs clash so much. And I tested it on so many different things. I tested it on recreational headphones that I listen on. I've listened on my M50Xs. I listened on my JBL 305s. I listened in my car. Everywhere, the highs were overbearing. And it might be a choice of style if you're a producer that plays your songs live a lot of those speakers don't have that great of a high-end band, but please make a different mix than a live mix. Vanta Black was specifically for that label release, but Monster Cat's doing a lot of live play stuff now. So Vanta Black is a pure example. I don't know a lot of other songs right off the top of my head. That was just that was one really big one that just killed the song for me. But I'm going to show you guys a technique that I use when managing high end. It is impossible, or at least I understand that it's impossible for any human person to be able to hear up to 20,000 hertz. Because if we were to only listen to high band and we were to just EQ, obviously we're having some phase, so you can still hear that band up there. But if you were to, have some white noise, some pink noise, whatever, and you were able to completely isolate 18,000 and up hertz, or if you have a frequency generator that can generate those hertz, it's impossible. Maybe up to 18,000 is a good reference. Sometimes people can listen up that high. I can listen up to 17.5 under some circumstances. But this is why I'm going to show you why. I take I always start with this preset called 20 to there's no 20 to 20. I start with 20 to 18 and I bring my high band, my number 7 right here, all the way up. I put it on a steep 8, so I go order steep 8, and this is how I EQ it. Sorry, I just took that out. What I do is I play the sound, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it this way. I'm actually going to roll the, no, I'm just going to pull it actually. I'm going to pull the knob this way, and once the sound starts sounding like it's being filtered, almost like a Fruity Love filter is put onto it, we're going to stop moving that high band. Once you can hear that those extra highs in the sound are being cut off too much, you can release the 7 band. And I'm going to show you how I do this. So we're going to start here. Let's go ahead and for this, we can actually listen to, I would say we can listen to the whole sound with each band open. I would say right about there. So our ending result was 18,075. In my opinion, that highness added a little bit to it. So even if we were to go down to 17.5, it would sound probably still the same, but that the extra presence of the highs there still let it able to go up to 1875 for that reason. So that's how I manage my highs. Utilize the notch filter. Don't boost your highs too much. Only boost it. I wouldn't even say go up to -6. I would say at least don't go up more than 3 decibels. If it's and again, if it's one of those frequencies that sound good, I would maybe notch up to -6 or +6, but I am still, I'm still strict on how I EQ in terms of boosting frequencies. Do that. I'm also doing, let's see. Yeah, or utilizing your orders is something also that you need to remember to do, because because if you can tell the difference, and this is good to know too. If you have a notch open instead of what is a better way to? It's called peaking. Peaking is what are in between the 7 and the 1. If you use order 8, it does this flat band right here. If we were to go up to 6, go up to 4, go up to 2, and then you go to your gentles, gentle 8, just is a way curvier version. I keep mine at 2 usually, unless I have a special use for it. So anyway, that's managing the highs. Please utilize the top part of Fruity EQ2. Bring it up big. A lot of people EQ with the small window. FL12 has the ability to open up your plugins. Please utilize that. Utilize the sub, bass, low mid, mid, high mid. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to stand for right there. I will get back to you on that. I don't know why PRS is there. Presence? I'm not. I don't know. And then treble, or your highs. So yeah, do that. Get this plugin, ISO L8. And now we're gonna manage our lows. Now our low ends, guys. Low end is important. Gonna be honest. If the low end's muddy, if the low end is not managed correctly, then you're gonna have a bad mix. I'm just gonna be completely honest. And even though all aspects of a mix matter, you still have to be careful with how you manage your low end. Low end is one of those things. It's either a hit or a miss. It's either a hit or a miss. And there's some songs sometimes that have kind of in between, but it's really hit or miss. You're gonna have to come back to the mix another day, bring your sounds down, pull them back up, monitor again and again and again until you get it right. And that's just you can't finish a song in a day. Even if it's a remix, guys, you can't finish a song in a day. It's just impossible. If you're gonna want quality, you spend 4 or 5 days. Even if the song takes you a day to finish the composition, I'm not gonna give you bad rep about that. But if you're thinking you can mix and master a track and all in one day, I'm just gonna say that you're crazy. So again, low end, compress before you EQ. I have OTT on this because it's a big room track and you have a baseline kick. I'm going to show you why. Where is our... Sounds a lot better. It brings our highs out. Anyway, we're going to do that same thing. We're going to use ISO 08 or ISO 05, whatever it is. I recommend getting it. It's freeware. It's freeware. I totally recommend it. So we're going to do this. And let's do it. 2 things we're going to be utilizing here. We're probably going to be only soloing our low. We might solo our low mids just to make sure that we're in order. And we're going to be using mids. If you don't know the difference between mid and side, I would just go back and look at my stereo imaging and mid-side EQ video. It's probably better to watch this before that, but it's fine. It's whatever way you do it, whatever way you learn better, that's fine. So that's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna monitor both our low and our low mids, and we're just gonna listen. We're gonna listen for a second. Let's actually listen before. So we're gonna listen before. Let's actually bring it up. I don't wanna kill you guys, but we need to be able to EQ. So. We're actually gonna solo just our lows. Okay. Now, it really depends on the sample here, guys. Even like for the highs, yeah, also determines on sample or synth. Here it's also a hit or miss for samples you use as well. This one is fairly decent. I wouldn't say it's the best sample in the world, but it's got a pretty flat low response, so I did boost up a little bit. Let me bring this up for you guys so you can see better. There is one thing I do now that I didn't do before. If I take the lowest aspect or any low end aspect in a song, and I do the same thing that I do to my highs. Up to 35. Usually the human can't hear below 35 depending on what system they're on. 35 to 30. I would even say the regular person, not even 40, they can hear below. But depending on if you have a sub kick, this is a baseline kick, things you hear in regular modern EDM, big room house, things like that. So I like to say that below 35 somebody wouldn't be able to hear on any other system. So I cut out with a steep 8. Well, it's a steep 6. Steep 8 would be good. I boost a little bit. See, I don't even boost above 3 is my rule of thumb usually. Managing low end, there's only so much you can do with low end, if I'm honest, when it comes to EQing. You can if your low end isn't prominent on a sample, you can usually take well, this is band 1 cutting off, band 2, band 3, and your low mids, you can kind of dip your low ends down a little bit to make your low end prominent. When I mean low end, I mean 120 down is usually my rule of thumb. But let me just show you. If I were to not solo anymore, if you want to make your low more prominent, you can tell the difference how the low end reacts. I wouldn't say a steep 6, but maybe like steep 4-ish. You can tell the difference. If you bring your low mids down and you bring your lows up, that dip right there provides the low end a lot more space. and you can hear the low end punch more. I would only recommend doing this technique if you have a sample, you have an aspect of the track in low end that doesn't have a respectful low. The low is not kicking enough in your favor. You can bring your low mids down a little bit on the EQ to make your to compensate for the low end. I like this rather than boosting the low end, and obviously I boosted it here just a little bit, only because this sample in general just doesn't have a good low end. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it doesn't have a good low end because it's muddy or something, but it's not. Its low end is not prominent enough. So I'm personally not going to leave this band here, but a technique to make your kicks pump a little bit more. One is to boost your lows and your highs on your kicks. Obviously, I did that here and here. But also something that even on, like, if you're listening on a speaker system, usually in cars, and people are researching, oh, what's the best way to EQ my car? The usual way is you can see that your lows are usually pretty higher than your low mids, your low mids. So I would say probably like about right here or something. And then your highs go up, and your highs go up a little bit more, and then they cut off. But yeah, that is one way. Because you don't necessarily always have to boost your low end with EQ, which I did for my reasons. You can bring your low mids down just a tiny bit, so they're, your low end is confident and it's up there. So we're gonna move on. We're actually gonna, let's listen to how that came out actually. You can hear that. Anyway, so that's how to manage low end. The rest of low end is just kind of side chaining. So I'll go over to my sub bass just to show a little bit more. Now with sub bass, again, I do the same thing, especially with sub bass. I do it a little bit more. I do it until to the most prominent point of this aspect of the track. So 35 right here. I used Camel Crusher on this because to give it some kind of distortion. Not really distortion in a way. It's bad, but to give a sub bass some highs, which is really the norm right now with any trappy kind of music, any electro kind of music. They're adding distortion to give it some highs and to give it not really tube warmth, but some warmth in general to the bottom of those lows. But yeah, for my sub basses, I use that preset 20 hertz to 18k hertz, and I just adjust my high end and I adjust my low end, and I do that technique that I always use: roll it off, and use ISOL8. Very amazing freeware plugin. If I can remember, I'll put it in the description. Next thing is the thing everybody's been asking for, and that is multi-band compression. So we're going to talk about that right now. I've got a lot of stuff on my pre-master. I'm just going to take a couple of it off. Limiter. Keep limiter there. Turn this EQ off. Let's turn that kick back down to where it was. All right, anyway, so multi-band compression. Let's go ahead and turn off the limiter and all that stuff. So basically, Maximus is a good way, through FL defaults is always the best way, to show how multi-band compression works. Now, before you learn about multi-band compression, if you haven't already, please go check out my compression video, because you will need to know how compression works in the first place for you to understand how multi-band compression works. And we are going to work with the main drop of this particular project so we can get the best results. Now, multi-band compression. Let's talk about it, okay? Usually used for in the mastering process. It can be used on a bus if you're bussing drums, if you're bussing really anything, leads or stuff like that. It's really simple concept. It's compression, but it's separated into your bands. So we have low, mids, and highs. A little bit less associated than, you know, a lot of other multi-bands. Usually multi-band, I know Isotope has a lot more bands than this, but we're just gonna do it with what we have, do it with the defaults. Things you can adjust. I adjusted my low band frequency to 120 because I believe that as you know, 120 more than 121 is your low below that. The Maximus default for the low band, I think, tries to compensate too much, because you can see that it has a mid band. I don't know. I don't know what these people were thinking when they put the low band in. Anyway, you can do a low cut, which basically means you're telling when the lows will end. It's by default, it just doesn't even, or by default it has a 20 hertz low cut. Depending on the track, I would say about 25 hertz. You know, but you know, leaving it on the default is fine. So we're just gonna do that. So we have a couple options on this side, and I'll bring it up for you guys so you can see a little bit. We have on, we have comp off, and we have muted, we have off. Off obviously means that you're just not even going to compress this band. Muted means that you're just, muted is usually just a mode for referencing. So you either have it the whole band off so you can listen to the other things, or just have it on. Compression off just means you're not going to compress the band is just the way it is, and then you have it on. So this is another good way. This is another good compressor, a good multi-band compressor, because FL makes their stuff visual. Please use that to your advantage. I wouldn't recommend, like in my last video for compression, I wouldn't recommend limiter as a compressor in general. Learning compression, it's a very good plugin to use, but this one in general is a multi-band compressor, so we're gonna show you how to use it. Now, please listen very carefully. Use pre and post gain very leniently. If you were to go check out, you know, Clear Master RMS, or no, what's a good one? Just the Clean Master one. They pump the pre up and the post they take down. Obviously, that's just if you're wanting to get. I'm assuming that's honestly if you're just gonna get like a really early whip out, or you just don't even care what your master sounds like. You just want to export the song and get done with it. So let's talk about it. Pre-gain, post-gain. Pre-gain, gain in general is sensitivity. I hope you guys know that. But gain in the producer world is boosting stuff and how loud you can get it. For some brightness settings, you can use post-gain to pull up your bands as much as possible, which we are going to be doing. You basically just, really for reference, when mastering, you want your lows to kind of be prominent, or you want your lows to be prominent, you want your highs to be prominent, and you want your mids to be just behind them. You want to use your post gain just a little bit. Leave your pre's where they are, unless you necessarily, if your signal's going through and the post game's really destroying it, apply your pre-game normally and just kind of get a balance between the two. Essentially, you're going to think of pre and post gain as a tube as well, as I said that the things in the mixer were. Your sound is coming through, it's hitting the pre-gain first, it's saying what's happening here. You're telling the gain what to do. You're saying pre, we're either taking down the sensitivity or the output decibels, and then we're going to go through our post gain. What's happening after? How much were we applying at the same time? We have our ceiling here. We have our threshold. We have saturation A mode, saturation B mode. This is actually our saturation. I was totally forgot about that. I don't use saturation, so I can't really speak to its importance. Here you go. You have your attack, your release, your sustain. Peak versus RMS. We'll probably get to that in a different. Video. Peaks, it goes off just the peaks, I think, and RMS is a math-based way of compression. I would review each of those if you guys don't know it already. There's a release, and I think this is the same way as the curve and limiter. And then you have your LMH and all that stuff. You have your speed. Apply your speed, so because if you're doing it. So, yeah. So we're going to go between them. So basically what's going to happen, I can't use Maximus. I'm sorry. I don't use multiband compression with Maximus. Wait, here we go. Let's do this one. Let's do Fruity multiband compressor instead. It's still visual. So can we open this up? No, we can't. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know. I don't really use Maximus for multiband compression because I was gonna try to use it because it was a visual one, but it's whatever. This one's kind of visual as well. So we're gonna not do that and not kill our ears, and we're gonna go to the default. So here we go. Got your things. Your low end, 120, 125ish. So you hit one. Actually, let's say 130-ish. Yeah, there we go. So we have our. So let's do our low end. So basically, here we go. Like many other compressors, this is how it works. We have our gain. We have a limiter version of it. We have our filter type. You have an LPFIR and a BWIIR. Really don't know the difference, gonna be honest with you. Don't really think it's important, but I can probably go over it on another video if I figure out that it's actually something important. So yeah, let's go with it. Compression, guys. Same thing as compression we went over before. Get out of here, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. So we have our threshold. We're gonna set our threshold. Let's see what we're dealing with here. So our red right here, is how much is being compressed, and the pink is how much of the signal is actually happening. You really want to do this. Multi-band compression is something that you have to study for a long time. I really don't do it a lot. I do it a little bit when mastering, but I really use a maximizer for mastering a lot. I usually a good way. I use these comp presets. They're fairly decent. You have to adjust a little bit of the settings based on your track, but I use those. But with low band, with compression, it's just like compression. It's just on the different bands. So you have your ratio. With your low end, I wouldn't put your ratio all the way up unless you have like a dubstep song, like some crazy dubstep song. You want the compression to be really high because it's one of those recreational tracks that you don't want a full slow recovery or a really not that lenient of a ratio because you want it to be, one of those tracks. So for big room, we're gonna keep the ratio up a little bit, or no, we're gonna keep it down a little bit because we need some more of that bass. We're gonna keep the release. Keep the release up to like 100. Keep the attack, keep the attack where it is usually. Gain, we will boost the gain for makeup probably about 1.5-ish decibels. So now since we have our low end set, we can move on to our mids. You can obviously see. And I would recommend just messing with the knobs. Obviously, keep your volume pretty low when you're doing multi-band compression. But yeah, I would just bring the knob down to where you think is necessary for the threshold and adjust your ratio according to what band it is. For the mids are very broad in this sense because it's a very large band. So I would try keeping the ratio a little bit low unless it's one of those tracks that you just think it needs a high ratio for. All right, let's move on to the highs now. Highs are a little bit different. Usually they tend to have a lot more compression on them. If they have a lot of high aspects, I try to keep them in the middle between a lot of compression and not any compression at all. So it's just kind of a testing thing that you have to do. And adjust your gain accordingly. I'm going to give like a half a decibel to the mids and almost a decibel to the highs. Wait, how much did I give here? 1.5. I'll give maybe almost 1 to mids, a little bit over 1 to the highs. So with A, you can see after, and bypassed, you can see before I had compression. Right there. You can hear the stability, especially in the mids. You can hear the stability that it has before and after. So let's go to the highs before, after. guys want to know what it sounds like without and with it, this is without it. This is with it. Alright, so I hope I helped you guys out a little bit. I had a little bit of extra time this time, so video went on way longer than I thought it was going to be, but, you know, try to combine 2 into 1 video. If you have suggestions for what I should do next, or if there is anything that I didn't clarify at all, please go to the comments below. Again, you know, multi-band compressor for FL, if you know how to use it, it's a damn good compressor. One thing that I still recommend, though, is this plugin right here. Please get it. It is freeware. It'll help you out with everything there is to know with mixing. There's side, there's mids, there's left, right. You can adjust the output. You can mute bands. You can solo bands. You can adjust the hertz for each band that you're monitoring. You can change the slope from 24 to 48. You can change it from stereo to the side difference and left right. It's just fantastic, man. Get the plugin. It'll help you so much, I promise. Anyway, give me suggestions, give me questions if you need them. Until the next one, I'll see you guys later.